Yo, what's up guys, Anime Titan here, back at it again with another What If, and today I'll be doing What If Deku had a sound quirk. But before I get into the actual What If, I want to say thank you guys for the support, and I really couldn't have gotten this far without you. The 100 sub special will be out really soon, and I will be trying to get out more content. Down in the description should be the link to my Discord server and Instagram account, so if you don't mind, go ahead and join my Discord server. I don't really mind the Instagram account, but if you could join my Discord server, I will be happy to help. Give you guys updates on early posts, as well as you guys interacting with what if ideas. I wouldn't mind, seeing as I'm not stuck up. I will accept any and all comments that you guys have, ways to improve, and also ideas that you'd like to test out. So, join the Discord server and we can have a lovely chat. So anyway, last time we left off was Izuku, Ida, and Todoroki, as well as the rest of Class 1A in the hospital room after Izuku had just told him that he's Clover. Everybody would have been shocked, and some of them would have been pissed. Denki would have yelled out, "Come on, Mito bro, why the hell didn't you tell us that you were Clover?" Izuku would reply saying, "If I told you that, would you have tried to be my friend?" With Denki saying, "Yeah, I would have been your friend." Izuku would have shaken his head saying, "No, you would have tried to be Clover's friend. You would have tried to be the famous person's friend. You wouldn't try to be you wouldn't try to meet Izuku Midoriya. You'd try to meet Clover." Denki would be confused at this, as Shoto would then explain. When you're famous, people tend to look towards the fame instead of who you actually are. I'm known as Shoto Todoroki, the son of Endeavor, not Shoto Todoroki, UA student, or next hero candidate. No. This would have brought everybody to the realization that, yeah, Izuku's probably right. They would have wanted to get to know Clover, not get to know Izuku Midoriya. Izuku would then reply with, "Exactly. Now, if you guys wouldn't mind, I'd like to get dressed. I have somewhere I need to be." They would all nod as Izuku would quickly they would exit the room as Izuku would enter the bathroom, get dressed, and then walk out of the room, saying goodbye to Shoto and Ida, as well as waving goodbye to the people outside the room as well. He would have head over to the hospital room of Tensei Ida. When he would reach the hospital room, he'd slowly enter, as he'd see Tensei hooked up to a bunch of machines, barely conscious. Izuku would tell Tensei that, "Your brother almost made a stupid mistake today, Tensei. He went after the hero killer. Wasn't the smartest move, but I understand where he's coming from. We were able to stop him before he did anything stupid. Just wanted to let you know he's still okay." Tensei would have nodded as Izuku would then say, "It's gonna be a while before you can join the club again, huh?" Tensei would let out a soft chuckle with this as he'd say, "I'll try to be there," in a raspy voice. Izuku would smile as he'd say, "I'll hold you to that. See you around, Tensei." Izuku would then proceed to leave, as he would head home. When he'd arrive home, he'd enter and see his mom busy cooking. She'd ask him what was up, and Izuku would say that, one of his friends tried to do something stupid, but that's not really why he's worried at the moment. She would have looked at him confused as he'd say, "My class now know I'm Clover, and I don't expect them to understand." She would then look up and say, "Well, if they're actually your friends, they wouldn't care if you're Clover. They'd still want to be friends with Izuku Midoriya." Izuku would then nod as he'd say, "Yeah, you're right." Izuku and his mother would then sit down to have lunch, as just after they had finished, the doorbell would ring. Izuku would open the door to see Bakugou, as Bakugou would say, "Hi, Auntie Inko. Mind if I borrow Izuku for a while?" Inko would then say, "No, I don't mind at all. Just make sure to get him home before 12." Bakugou would nod as he'd grab Izuku by the neck and say, "Come on, you look like you need a drink." Izuku would smile ever so slightly as he'd say, "I probably do." Izuku would then call up the driver of the limousine as he would arrive, and he and Bakugou would basically head out. Izuku would head to one of the clubs as he would drag Bakugou in through the private room and give him a mask. Bakugou would ask what the hell this was for, as Izuku would say, "You don't want the people storming you away looking for you, wanting to know who I am, do you?" Bakugou would then say, "Yeah, you're right." Bakugou would ask what he would be doing, though, as Izuku would say, "You, my friend, are going to be on the special effects team for tonight." Bakugou would look confused as Izuku would say, "Head down to backstage. They'll explain everything to you. Eventually, I'll have a signal for you to pop out." Bakugou would nod as he'd head down, to backstage. Izuku would then walk on stage as he'd begin playing his music. Bakugou would be in the back, letting off small explosions, causing flickering lights in the background, which would have made everybody even more hype for the concert, seeing as this was a new effect that they hadn't really seen. Izuku would then eventually press the button that would alert Bakugou to his appearance on stage, as and Izuku would basically he'd be still playing the music as Bakugou would appear. Izuku would yell to Bakugou to let off a massive explosion centered in front of him. Bakugou would do so, and just as he does, Izuku would catch it, encase it in a ball of sound and spread it out over the crowd. As soon as it reaches over the crowd, he'd let it out, causing a bit, dampening the sound, but still giving it the effect of the explosion. Everybody would have gone nuts at this, as they would have done this a couple more times before eventually ending off the show. Bakugou would then, as soon as everybody had left, Bakugou and Izuku would head to Izuku's private room. But before Izuku would enter, he'd turn to the lighting and stage crew as he'd thank them and then head into the room. Bakugou and Izuku, as soon as they'd enter, they'd take off their masks and have a bit of a drink. Sorry, guys. My apologies. So, anyway, they'd have a drink. Bakugou would look at Izuku and ask him if this is what he does every single Saturday. Izuku, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. Izuku would then say, "Yeah, pretty much." "Why?" Bakugou would reply with, "It's tiring." Izuku would chuckle as he'd say, "Eventually you'll get used to it." Bakugou would nod as he'd say, "Yeah, I guess. We should probably get home. What time is it?" Izuku would then say, 11:35. Bakugou would then say, "Definitely need to get home." Izuku would nod as he and Bakugou would get into the limousine, and they would Izuku would drive Bakugou back home and then get dropped off at his house. The next morning, Izuku would basically be, helping out his mom with a bunch of stuff around the house. Sorry, guys. Anyway, Izuku would be helping his mom out with a bunch of stuff around the house. Eventually, the school would start up again, and Izuku would head to class. He'd be a little bit annoyed that the people he'd be kind of anxious and annoyed, wondering if his class would want to be more friendly with him, seeing as he's Clover, or more friendly with him, seeing as he's Izuku and he doesn't have any secrets to hide with him anymore. As soon as he would enter the classroom, he'd see his class murmur and then stop. They'd look at him, and this would kind of confuse Izuku. He'd walk to his seat as the eyes would have still followed him. Eventually, Mina would speak up, saying, "Sorry, Izuku. We didn't mean for what we said to come out the way it sounded." It's just we don't want you to keep secrets from us. And that was a pretty big secret at that. So, I guess it's only fair that you let out one of your biggest secrets, that all of us do as well. Izuku would look at them and say, there's no need for that, I don't really care. I'm just here to learn and become a hero. I don't care about secrets, I don't care about Clover. That was just a means for me to get money to help my mom. This would have kinda shocked all of them, as Izuku would say, I could care less if Clover goes out of business or not, but I'm here to be a hero, and I'm planning on finishing this course to become a hero. Everybody would have been super happy at this, as we go to the... Give me a second. What the fuck? Anyway, Aizawa Sensei would tell them that the final exams are coming up in a week. So Izuku would help Kyoka and Bakugou study for... Well, not study. He'd help Bakugou study and Kyoka with the physical stuff. Come on. Yeah. Anyway, the two would be very grateful for what Deku had done, and the day of the final exam would come. What would happen here is that what was it? Oh yeah. They would write the test, and Izuku, Kyoka, and Bakugou would do pretty well. I'm sorry if I'm stuttering, I am quite annoyed now, because I only just found out that this wasn't recording earlier, and I had given a quite a bloody damn long speech on the battle. But so anyway, after they had finished the written portion, they would all head down to the training grounds, where they'd see the teachers. The students would ask what was going on, as Nezu would explain. Same explanation. Oh fuck. Sorry guys. Same explanation as in canon. They'd had experience with villains, and that they basically, they have to face the teachers, seeing as they already have real-world villain experience. The students would understand, and everything would go to canon, except the fight between Bakugou, All Might, and Izuku. The two boys would immediately enter the training ground after they had been told that it started. Izuku would be, the two boys would be walking down the street, as Izuku would feel the vibrations, knowing that this is probably either All Might or one of his attacks. He'd immediately tell Bakugou to dart to the side, which both of the boys would do. They would have avoided the attack narrowly, seeing as it had shattered multiple windows. Izuku would be really happy, seeing as his suit was now intaking the sound. Bakugou would be... he'd be grinning like a madman, as he'd look at Izuku and ask him, what's the plan? Izuku would tell him that, one-on-one, they don't stand a chance against All Might. But if they work together, one decoy, one attack, and then constantly switch at an unknown pace, they should be just fine. Bakugou would smile at this, as he'd ask who gets first crack. Izuku would then say, you do, as the two boys would charge straight at All Might, who would be charging down on them. Izuku would fall behind Bakugou slightly, as Bakugou would get up right in front of All Might, letting off a massive explosion at the man. This would blind All Might temporarily for 2 seconds, as in that time Izuku had gotten behind All Might. He would then proceed to launch All Might in the air with a massive burst of sound, as Bakugou would launch himself into the air, chasing All Might. He'd quickly be attacking with a flurry of explosions while blasting all around All Might. Then Deku and Bakugou would switch sides, as Bakugou would release a massive explosion, sending All Might just a bit higher, with Izuku constantly zooming around All Might, letting out pulses of sounds, disorientating All Might, not allowing him to keep focus. As with the final attack, Izuku would have flown down straight at All Might, launching a massive sound wave straight into the big man's stomach, slamming All Might to the ground. Immediately after that, Izuku and Bakugou would land, as the two would look at each other. Izuku would tell Bakugou to create the biggest one-handed explosion that he possibly can, which Bakugou would do. Just before Bakugou did, though, Izuku would put his hand right next to Bakugou's, as Bakugo would launch it and Izuku would launch a sound wave. These two attacks would combine, with Izuku's sound pushing Bakugo's explosion even further and making it even stronger. The attack would hit All Might, as it would burn him, as well as disorientate and knock him back a bit. Izuku and Bakugo would then simultaneously say, "Combined attack, sonic explosion." Bakugo would then say that was a pretty damn awesome attack, and wonders if they could do it with the gauntlet. Izuku would smile as he'd say, "We can always test it out." Bakugo would smile as he would pull the pin on his gauntlet, and Izuku would let out all the stored up sound that his suit had collected by then. The two attacks would combine again, as Bakugo and Izuku's attack, the sonic explosion, would be barreling down on All Might. The flames would hit, burning off the man's parts of the man's clothes, as well as knocking him back quite a few feet. He'd be disorientated and confused at this stage, seeing as there was a lot of smoke and fire around him. He'd also be wobbling because of the sound messing with his eardrums and by extent the rest of his senses. Before he could react though, the two boys would be barreling down on him once more, launching a flurry of kicks and punches which he would basically just have to block, seeing as he is still in a dazed state. Before he could actually land a hit though, Izuku would land one of the cuffs on All Might, while Bakugo would finish strapping up the other arm. And just like that, the two would have beaten the number one hero. They would have taken down All Might. All Might would have smiled at this, as he would have said, "Well done, you two," in an extremely loud voice, seeing as his ears were still ringing a bit. Izuku and Bakugo would smile as the two would fall over backwards, being extremely exhausted. All Might would smile as he'd jump away to a recovery girl because of time limit. The medics would then rush into Izuku and Bakugo to check them out. Izuku, before the medics would arrive, would tell Bakugo that, "We make a good team, huh, Ka-chan?" With Bakugo replying with, "Damn straight, Deku. When we become pro heroes, we must start an agency together." As Izuku would smile, saying, "No problem there, Ka-chan," with the two falling into unconsciousness due to extreme exhaustion. The class and the teachers would have been extremely shocked that the two were capable of working together at such an extent, as well as pulling off such high-level moves, and being synchronized to such a degree. What the fuck, sorry guys. So anyway, give me a second. The two boys would then find themselves waking up in Recovery Girl's office. Oh, fucking ass. Anyway, Bakugo would look at Izuku and ask why they were here. Izuku would then say, "We passed out because of exhaustion, Ka-chan. Give me some more time to rest and we can go." Bakugo would say, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I need some more time too." As Recovery Girl would walk in and tell the both of them that, "This is what I expect from you two. No more injuries, just tiredness." Bakugo and Izuku would say, "We'll try our best, Recovery Girl," as the two would basically then just rest up. After Izuku had opened his eyes, he was now fully recuperated after another half-hour nap. Here he would wake up Bakugo as the two would leave Recovery Girl's office, also known as the Med Bay. As soon as he'd exit the door, he'd see Kyoka and the rest of Class 1A. Kyoka would run up and hug him, telling him that he was amazing. Izuku would smile and say she did well too. Kyoka would blush, as well as the rest of Class 1A being, well, a little upset seeing that the couple had ignored them completely. As Mina would, well, not Mina, let's go with Kaminari, would chip in saying, "That was so manly." As Bakugo and Deku would look at him confused, asking, "What do you mean?" They then... Fuck. This has got to stop. My yawns. They're deadly. Anyway. They would ask, "What do you mean?" As Kaminari Now let's have it be Ida. Ida would chip in saying that you two took on the number one hero, disorientated and knocked him back, burned off his clothes, and were able to handcuff him. How did you do it? Izuku would then reply with teamwork. Me and Kachan's known each other for quite a while, so we know how I know how he moves and he knows how I move. So we just integrated that into a fighting style, as well as constantly moving. Bakugou's attacks are great for close-up and mid-range attacks. So it means that he needs to be close enough to inflict a large amount of damage. And if All Might's on the ground, you're not going to get in that damage. He's far too fast. So the best thing to do is disorientate him and then launch him into a place where he can't really maneuver, being the sky, which is exactly what I did. And Bakugou had let out a fierce explosion. After that, I had decided to follow Bakugou's lead and use my sound to disorientate him while Bakugou had kept juggling All Might. And eventually, after the disorientation, I would have launched him into the ground with a massive sound pulse, which would basically drive the wind out of any normal person and injure. After that, the sonic explosion, that was basically just improvisation on the spot. This would have made everybody in Class 1A sweat drop, seeing as the two had basically just came up with a combined attack on the spot. With Bakugou and Izuku smiling, saying, well, yeah, there's nothing else, it's just how we roll. With the rest of Class 1A sweat dropping yet again. Kyoka would then say, if you think that was intense, you should see the training session these two idiots put up. As the rest of the class would have wondered what the hell she was talking about, with Bakugou saying, hey, our training sessions were meant to be a secret. You can't just go and tell everybody that it's like a movie. Kyoko would chuckle, saying that, well, it is basically a movie. For me anyways, because I get to see my Izuku. Bakugou would scoff as he'd say, yeah, whatever. The two boys would then leave with Izuku walking with Kyoka and Bakugou walking close with them, seeing as Bakugou's like that one friend that you always have with you. Kyoka would have smiled as she'd tell Izuku that she'd see him tomorrow, giving him a gentle kiss, with Bakugou telling him that, yeah, pretty damn soon you're gonna forget all about me, aren't you? Izuku would then shake his head, saying, no, you'll be my best friend now and forever, Kachan. As Bakugou would smile, saying, so we're still on for the combined hero agency, right? With Deku saying, damn straight, Kachan, there's no way I'm giving up on that. With Bakugou, smiling profusely. Nezu would have seen the two on the cameras, as he'd think to himself that these two will be a fearsome duo to mess with in the future. After that, the class would basically get a 1 week break. Well, not a week break, but they would be told that pretty soon that they're going to go on a training camp, and that even those that failed will have a chance to go on the training camp. They'll just have to work harder. Everybody would have been excited at this, as, well, they would have basically gone to the shopping center to get what they needed. This would have led to the creepy Shigaraki incident. Shigaraki would have wanted to know what made Stain so popular and why he didn't off Izuku. Seeing as Bakugou had left Izuku because he needed to get something, and so did the rest of the class. Izuku would have been stuck alone with Shigaraki, as Izuku would tell him that he's not really sure. He doesn't really know what is going on. As Shigaraki would tell him that, oh, come now, boy, you know who I am. You know what I want. Izuku would shake his head, saying, no. Meanwhile, he was shaking his head. He would reach his hand into his pocket and tap the emergency dial for, the police. Seeing as Izuku is a celebrity, the police is basically his speed dial contact. Shigaraki would then tell him that, you don't want to make any stupid moves now, do you? As Izuku would say, no, I don't, Shigaraki. I'm not gonna make any stupid moves. The police would have picked up on Izuku's call, and they would basically be listening. Izuku would put the phone on speaker as he'd say, "Shigaraki, what do you want?" The police would immediately hear that Shigaraki is there. It's like, this is a shopping center. Shouldn't you be more hidden? Shigaraki would shake his head, saying, "Now come now, Midoriya. You know I'm just here for a little chat." The police would have immediately dispatched a squad to the shopping area, as they would have picked up on Izuku's call. Not picked up, they would have picked up the location where Izuku's call resonated from. Izuku would then explain to Shigaraki that, okay, look, Shigaraki, the reason Stain is basically so renowned in the villain society at the moment is because he's not just willy-nilly running around trying to kill people. He targets those heroes that aren't proper heroes, the ones that do it for the fame and the glory. He doesn't target those that do it for the right reasons. His ideology is what makes Stain, what makes people want to follow Stain, that makes people respect him. The ideology that the pro-heroes need to uphold a certain level of pro-hero status. Shigaraki would have then said, so basically he wants every hero to be like All Might. With Izuku saying, yeah. The police would have arrived as they would evacuate the area. Well, while Shigaraki and Izuku were talking, the police would have arrived, and they would have evacuated the area, making sure that there aren't any civilians. Shigaraki would then tell Izuku that, well, it seems that all our toys are gone, so I'm just gonna leave too. Izuku would then say, it's up to you, Shigaraki. Nobody has to get hurt. If you go, I'll go. Shigaraki would smile as he'd say, that's a smart boy. Now, keep walking. As Shigaraki would have left Izuku's throat, allowing the boy to walk away. But just as he did, Shigaraki would walk away as well, with one of the police officers shooting him with a tracker. This will come into play much later on. So eventually, the rest of Class 1A would arrive, and they'd see all the hidden police, as they'd ask what was going on. Izuku would then say he had a bit of a run-in with Shigaraki, and called the police. As the police would walk up to him and say, you were pretty smart, kid. With Izuku saying, thanks. I wasn't intending on dying or letting civilians die because of me. Bakugou would then say, damn it, you could have told me first, Deku. Izuku would have then said, Bakugou, we really shouldn't have fought here. This wouldn't have been the proper place. In a second's worth of time, Shigaraki could have killed over 20 people. I was thinking about the safest alternative. We couldn't fight Shigaraki even if we wanted to, not in this enclosed area. With Bakugou telling him that, fine, but I'm kicking his ass next time. Izuku would then nod as he'd say, okay. So anyway, they'd get what they wanted, what they needed, and they would head back home. They would get back to school, as basically Aizawa and the other teachers would have heard about this, as they would have decided that they need to push it up now. Aizawa would have told them that instead of it being the next week, they will be doing that tomorrow. So they dismissed for the rest of the day, and they need to go get their stuff ready now. The class would do so as they'd leave the house and go pack their stuff. Izuku would get home as he'd explained to his mother that he'd be going away on a school training camp for a while, which she would nod at. And I do think this is where I'll be ending it off. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I'm Titan, signing out. Peace.